Boa tarde a todos, a todas as pessoas que estão nos assistindo pelo nosso canal do YouTube, a todas as pessoas presentes aqui no Instituto dos Advogados de São Paulo. Sejam todos muito bem-vindos. Eu sou Ana Luísa Neri, sou diretora cultural do Instituto dos Advogados de São Paulo e tenho a alegria de estar aqui nessa mesa, de ladear o doutor Alexandre Zavalha Pereira Coelho, presidente da nossa comissão de estudos denominada Direito, Inovação e Tecnologia, e também organizador desse evento, que em sua companhia tem a honra de abrir. Em sua missão institucional de difundir o conhecimento jurídico, o IASE promove esse evento para discutir inteligência artificial aplicada ao direito. E hoje temos o privilégio de ouvir Joshua Walker, autor dessa vanguardista obra, intitulada On Legal Artificial Intelligence, um rápido tratado sobre inteligência artificial no Brasil, publicado em 2021 pela Revista dos Tribunais, projeto esse que foi organizado pelo nosso professor Alexandre. Foi coordenado e prefaciado, né, pelo Alexandre e também pela professora Marina Pfefferbaum, minha amiga, colega da mestrado da PUC, e pelo professor Alexandre Pacheco. Eu passo a palavra ao professor Alexandre Zavalha, que dará seguimento a essa abertura, apresentando também os nossos presentes aqui na mesa, para que possamos ouvir também o nosso convidado especial. Muito obrigada.
Olá a todos, grande privilégio estarmos aqui nessa mesa, agradecer a doutora Ana Neri pela oportunidade de a gente ter esse evento presencial e também online, um evento híbrido, todos também tendo a oportunidade de assistir esse momento para a gente histórico, né? Porque nós estamos aqui, primeiro nessa casa tão especial, mas mais do que isso, né? Com um dos pioneiros do mundo, né? Relacionados ao uso de inteligência artificial, mas principalmente essa visão analítica dos problemas jurídicos. O Joshua Walker, vou fazer só essa introdução em português, depois nós já vamos mudar aqui para o inglês, né? E a ideia é que seja um bate-papo. Então, o Joshua Walker é o fundador, né, do Codex, que é um dos laboratórios de inovação e tecnologia mais importantes do mundo, que fica na Universidade de Stanford. Ele foi o fundador há 20 anos atrás. E nessa mesma época fundou dentro da faculdade o Lex Machina, que foi a primeira startup de analíticos do mundo. Ele vai contar a história, mas começou estruturando dados, né, de propriedade intelectual, de processo de propriedade intelectual. E depois a empresa foi adquirida por uma das grandes do mundo, conhecidas, né, a LexisNexis. Então, aquilo que a gente vê hoje, né, o advogado pensa assim, o juiz pensa assim, ele que criou, né, a primeira empresa que foi a base desse produto, né. E nós temos aqui o nosso pioneiro do Brasil, né? O Marcelo, que trouxe toda a discussão de jurimetria para cá, quando nem tecnologia a gente não tinha, né? Fazendo na mão, no Excel ali, né? Então, hoje é um dia, né, um privilégio para a gente estar com dois verdadeiros pioneiros aí do assunto. E o Marcelo também, né? Dispensa aí todos os nossos comentários, presidente daqui da comissão, mas também presidente da BJ e uma pessoa muito importante também na cultura. Nós estivemos juntos, né, com o Joshua essa semana, 2 dias em Brasília, fomos ao Supremo, fomos ao STJ, ao CNJ, né, e o Marcelo também iniciou todos esses trabalhos lá, desde Justiça em Números, né, e quantos trabalhos aí vem ajudando a desenvolver e mostrando para a gente, né, que, na verdade, a gente teve um avanço muito grande na criação do nosso sistema, né, e também na digitalização dos processos. Mas, né, nós podemos ter esse ambiente digitalizado, cheio de informação e não fazer nada com ela, né? E aí que entra a ciência de dados. E onde a gente realmente está começando agora essa nova fase do PDPJ, focada em microserviços e também em ciência de dados, né? Com o DataJude e agora o Codex, que é o novo projeto, né, de estruturação de dados do CNJ. Então tem muita coisa interessante para a gente falar aqui essa noite. Então eu gostaria de agradecer mais uma vez aos presentes e também quem nos está assistindo online. So, Joshua, I was just telling them that we are here now with those two real pioneers in the world and in Brazil. Yeah, who works with that. Just let me borrow it. So this is the project that we were working together for a year and a half to bring this book to Brazil, one of the most important books about artificial intelligence here in the whole world. And when we talk about artificial intelligence, we have two different sides. The first one is the impact on the law. liability, data protection, and criminal security, and all of that. So it's an important field for us as an opportunity to work with. And also the other side, which is the using artificial intelligence for legal service. So these two different perspectives, and they're both important for us. So we're going to talk about a little bit about it. So we're going to just start it with Joshua. It's not supposed to be a lecture, but a talk. So he's just going to start telling us about the story and about the book. And then, Marcelo, please, at any time, this is the idea. You can have questions, and also Ana and the audience too. Please.
That's great.
Oh.
Hola a todos y obrigado, Yaspi, Alex. Every trip I make to Brazil, I learn a new Brazilian word or Portuguese word or two, and hopefully the next book will be on Brazilian legal AI, and we'll be teaching the planet how to do it right. And people here, there's issues. It's hard to do the work. We're talking with Marcelo, who really is a pioneer in Brazil. And people talk about inflation. It's difficult. In the U.S., if you look at the Wall Street Journal's opinion section, it's talking about how great Brazilians' financial and insurance regulation is, and how Brazil can help, is really innovative in these spaces. Also, the density of your community in Sao Paulo, as well as in Rio and Brasilia, the density of the networks between finance and insurance and technology and law and the judiciary is quite unique. Most places I go, so the South Korean Supreme Court has been very worried about artificial intelligence taking their jobs, doing judging for them. It wasn't really true in Brasilia at all. What I found, because I'm usually very careful about talking about AI with judges, what I found is, the judges are much more worried about being buried by their caseload than being replaced by AI. They want AI to take the routine cases because they want to focus on the most creative, where they need most of their judicial creativity. And so I do think you have a unique opportunity in Brazil. And would love to actually refer some of my time to Marcelo to talk. I'd love to hear his story about how he got a start and how we can work on real projects in Brazil as opposed to me chattering on for a bit. So Marcelo, do you want to lead us a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Joshua, it's an honor for me to be here. And like to have this opportunity to exchange some ideas and to share our experiences. Of course, my experience is smaller than yours, but it's focused here in what we do here, so I didn't have the chance to discuss much of the experience that people have abroad. And so this is a really important chance and an opportunity that I thank Alexandre and my friend Ana also for this opportunity. And we were just laughing here because I said the difference between the South Korean judges and the Brazilian ones, and that we have like 100 million cases to decide. So it's just that's why we are eager. Yes, anything that could help us is welcome.
We say in English, never let a good crisis go to waste.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's what we have, and we face, because that's because we had like a dictatorship in Brazil that started in '64 and then went up to the '80s, and then people here, they are afraid of losing their legal rights. So when we had our new constitution that came in 1988, so people were really afraid of all civil guarantees. So we had to make sure that everyone could have the chance to go to court whenever they feel that they were being that something wrong was happening to them. And but we went too far on that, And then so everything is free. And you can file a lawsuit anytime you want, and it's almost it's low cost or no cost at all. And then we got in this situation that we are now, that is like a hyper litigation, as we say. So we litigate about everything, and it's in a really low cost, and it's under a legal and even economic perspective, it's wrong, because sometimes and very often the cost of the lawsuit is higher than the right that you are discussing. You know, so and it doesn't make any sense, and that's why, as we were saying, Joshua, that when I first had this, I was like, I went to the political science first and then economics, and I was really, I mean, I was expecting that when you study complex human phenomena, that you have to use statistical tools to better describe the reality and then face the problems and then try to like try different solutions, and I was really amazed when I start going to law school, and I realized that the way that we studied law was it's almost like a branch of literature. You know, we're just reading each other, you know, and it's badly written, by the way. Most of the books are just terrible to read, and they had like no science at all. I mean, we're just like this, and we were really discussing important issues like I don't know, criminality and how to collect more taxes or less, or how to save corporations that are in crisis, and then things that are really important for society, and we had no idea how to do it because we were just discussing ourselves, you know. And then at that time I said we could use more statistical tools, and as Alexandre said, at that time it was not related to technology because it was too soon. But then when technology came and all the lawsuits went electronic, then we start to build those huge databases that are really important for us to understand what's wrong in society, because what's wrong in society usually goes to court. You know, so it's an important point of view of what's not working. And I think that's why I think if we compare to other fields that when we do research, maybe using statistical tools plus high-end technology, like to build like artificial intelligence or even deep analysis on what's going wrong in society. I mean, it's the best way that we can better build a society that's more fair, it's more just. You know, it's just that's more or less how I see it. But one thing that I like to sometimes I question myself is how far can we go? I mean, because when we study the courts, we say, okay, we have a lot of like small cases, and this is really clear in Brazil. We see it's like a huge population of cases that are simple, that should not exist. And sometimes I think of legal of AI and technology in law as probably the judges in Brasilia think of, as a way to avoid new lawsuits and not of solving lawsuits, because we see lawsuits, sometimes we see like the lawsuit like that the courts should deal only with complex litigation, like hard cases, as you said, Joshua, and maybe hard cases are not suitable for how far can we go? Can we use AI, for example, in your opinion? That's a question that I have. Can we use AI to solve like hard cases and complex litigation, or is it just for mass litigation, for simple cases that because we have a lot of them, they're simple, they should not exist?
I think it's a great question. Alex, do you want to start?
No. I've just
him on the spot as much as possible.
had to say, Marcelo has a very nice expression that I use a lot, that here in Brazil, all those data from our judiciary is just like a sociological pre-salt. You know, pre-salt to the oil company here in Brazil, we have this pre-salt that you have oil just into the sea, very deeply in the sea. So it's just like our big data from judiciary. All the problems of our society in some kind of way is reflected there. So this is a way to understand and address all of our social problems. You know?
There we go. So I'm not going to get into the politics of oil companies and things that can happen with them. But, you know, legal AI companies, it's all the same issues as everything else. I think there's two ways of thinking about the grand theory of how far we can go. My impression, it's just my impression, is that judges would be happy to automate resolution of standard cases. And people may prefer it. They may opt into that because it doesn't take 10 years to get resolution of your case. It may be a lot faster, even if there's risk on that as well. Knowing the boundary between a simple and a complex case, that itself is incredibly complicated. The other thing we can do, I think, that's very much within the horizon of right now, is we can see problems and change the code, change the statute. and I've seen this several times in the US where we reveal a problem with a statute and then the legislature can solve it, or the president can solve it, or the Supreme Court can solve it. But you have to show it to them first, and you have to let everybody have access to this data to argue using it. That's very, very powerful. The deeper question is, what's the limit? And I think we can't say for sure how far legal AI can go. I call this the AI event horizon. So with a black hole, there's a limit to how deeply you can see inside the black hole, because beyond that, light can't escape. Humans have never had an intelligence that we've created, unless you count your pet pug or Labrador retriever or horse. We've never had an intelligence that's kind of beyond ours, so we can't know how good it's going to get. But we don't have to answer that question. All we have to start doing is organizing the data, and we begin and get better and better. And I don't think we can avoid using the data. The analogy I like to use for legal empirical information, legal history, if you will, is, and I know that justice is ineffable and profound, but imagine being a factory owner where you had no idea how much raw material is going in, how many people work for you, how many processes they're involved in, how efficient each one is every day, and what's the error rate? How many flawed widgets are you producing? That's our judiciary. And if you look beyond that, okay, we have one body that's creating laws. We don't know what happens with that. We create laws often for there's a case or something happens, there's a fear, and there's an incentive to create a new law around a certain area. We don't know if it works or not, really. And measuring that, just doing basic analysis of here's this law, here's the intention, and here's what actually happened, that can have a profound effect on the efficacy of entire, I would call it nation states, right? Securities laws, but also family law. We don't have data on any of these things. And if you look as lawyers, going back to Marcelo's comment, we learn civil procedure, we learn it through cases, and that's very exciting. Now, for the first time in the US, you can say, here's this rule creating this procedure, and here's every procedure, everyone who's used this and not, and here's all the ways it's going wrong. Here is the impact of these on settlement. We can teach things empirically, I think, for the first time, and that's pretty exciting. So the good news is that everything is chaos, so just a little bit of order, just a little bit of data can have an enormously positive impact on the bottom line and on social well-being, I think.
So Marcelo, tell us, you began with the first projects in our CNJ, Justice in Numbers and others. So tell us in Joshua, how was it? we did not even have a database at that time.
Yes.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, it was like it was a different time, so people were not discussing AI as we are here, and
We were just crazy guys,
Yes, we
just
were-
like Joshua in the 2000s.
We're still crazy,
but you know what? I mean, they had at least. I was when I first started. I had this. I said people are gonna think that I'm out of my mind. I mean, because it's such a huge change, and nobody was saying anything about that. And then I was surprised that like they understood at least the mindset, the new mindset. They said it makes sense. So since the beginning, as I was hearing Joshua saying, that's different here in Brazil. The judges and the justices are more open to this kind of. That's started since the beginning. I realized that they needed help. So they were eager to receive any kind of feedback or anything that could help, because the whole system collapsed. That's the fact. That's our situation now. It's not working at all, and so it was like okay. I mean, at that time, at least I was expecting more resistance. I mean, people would be more like not able to or not open to, willing to discuss this kind of, but that was not true. But like if we look to the way that we do laws when we discuss and vote new statutes, so that's something you were talking about, and I had the same the opinion. I said, it's the way we do it. It's crazy. We should study more. We should have like we should assess more the impact of the decisions that we are making here. If like a physician or a company that releases a new medicine in the market without any study, without any trials, they would be arrested. I mean, it's a crime. We do that all the time, and it's okay. You know, that's how we do things. And it depends on where you're discussing this kind of issues, Alexandre. I don't know, in the court, the court system, they understand. But if we go to the Congress, for example, it's not welcome. They think that they want more. They want to have more freedom to decide things out of boundaries that are that sometimes the empirical legal studies they bring. You know, they restrict the freedom that we have to make decisions as lawmakers. Let's say so. It's more difficult there, but in law schools and in courts, that people that deal with law on a day-by-day basis, they understand. They say, okay, it makes sense, and we should listen to you. That's how I see it.
So, and you, Joshua, how did you start? You began with those IP lawsuits and claims. So, how do you start? And in the U.S., for the most cases, you have to buy the data from the judiciary. So, if you can choose, if you come back in time, because now we are discussing this here in Brazil, what do you think we must have an open data, or you think it's a good way to buy for the data, not for the data, for the access to data? I believe in open data. I just want to hear from you.
Sure. And so I actually got started when I was 15 in a way, and I'm not responsible for a lot of the innovation. My dad, when he was 50, he was a business guy, and he decided to start his own company when he was 50 years old, learned data, but he knew nothing about computers. And in the state of Texas, where he was, they release, this will go back to law in a second, they release the hotel revenue data. So, and they release this economic data so that hotels, so they don't overbuild in one area and underbuild in another. They want supply and demand to meet. So they release the revenue data, so that will tell you. But, this will shock you, people lie sometimes on their taxes. So all the data are wrong. So he'd been doing this in the hotel business for a long time. He could tell, he could sort it, and before long, he had this data set of all these different variables, the kinds of hotels, how big, how much money they spent on different rooms. And using this system, he had one concept for the business that was going to make money. That didn't work at all. But what the system could eventually do was it could predict within about 5 percentage points how much money the hotel would make. And it was based on 5 to 10 different variables where it was. And he sometimes would send people to locations to count cars, so he got empirical data. So he actually built this database that is a predictive modeling machine. And if you're a bank going to invest, X million dollars in building something, you have to have this. So Lex Machina, for me, was just that. It was not different at all. It wasn't about predicting how much money a hotel would make. It was predicting the value of a lawsuit, predicting what could happen, looking at trends in the marketplace. And it was just using that very simple empirical approach to do this. And eventually, people like insurance companies bought our data, and they used it to sell insurance, so that if you had this certain type of lawsuit, we used to not have any clue what was happening, how many lawsuits there were in certain areas. Now you can buy insurance, and it's pretty well priced, so it prevents people from exploding. The economy is more efficient because of this. And the Senate and the White House and the courts can use it to say, hey, this protocol isn't working very well, or this procedure we should do earlier because people can settle their cases if they know X, Y, Z. So the system can correct itself. it's almost like the most simple possible things you can learn from engineering and data science. If we just apply a few percentage points of that, it's good. Now, Alessandra's question is a little bit of a trap because it's a very political thing. Do you sell data or not? Most people, I think the consensus is open the data, don't try to sell data. The United Kingdom does that. In the US, the reason they charge you for data is because Congress does not love the courts so much. It's a little bit different than the sort of power structure here. Congress doesn't love their laws being struck down, so the budget for the judiciary is tougher for them to get. Even though they've been there a long time, it's a great institution, but getting budget for IT projects is hard, and getting budget for clerks. So the courts make about $600 million, $700 million a year selling photocopying fees for data. Now, it pays for clerks, so I'm actually not against it at all, but it changes what you have to do and the expense of these things. You have to charge for your finished data when you do it. So I think most people I've met here want open data, but I think the real question, Alessandra, is not, is the data going to be free or not? It's who's going to do the work and for which projects. And I've often found in the US that the most important projects are the least well-funded. So things like securities class action, intellectual property, commercial disputes, here it might be labor, tax. There's enormous commercial interest in those things, but how do you make sure that the prisoner rights data is handled as well? And maybe there's a way that we can take a small percentage of the high-end commercial projects and use it to do that. So to me, the question is, who does the work? Because if you look at the raw data we have today and the finished product that we need, that you as a litigator or the client, the general counsels, the judges, what they need to be, the functional tactical intelligence they need requires an enormous amount of analysis, human and computational. How does that work get done? And how do you ensure that even things where there's not a clear commercial incentive, that work gets done as well? But I'd love to hear from you about what you think and how you think that work gets accomplished.
Oh, yeah. As you say, we are now just researching the models in the whole world, see which countries have open data and which countries are charging this access. Marcelo is with me in one task force at CNG, just researching that. So I tend to choose the open data because I think the private sector, all the society can help to organize this data. So, but we are still researching the best model. Okay. And Marcelo, as you work in the private sector with those kind of projects, Geometrics and all of that, and also in the public sector, do you see any difference? Because everybody at the public sector just say to me, oh, here we don't have budget, we have all those cultural things, but I'm seeing a lot of nice jobs and a lot of innovation in the public sector, and I think it's the same challenge in the private sector. Nobody has budget, and the cultural thing is right the same. So what do you think? There's a difference, and tell us which is the biggest challenge in each of the sectors, and what do you think is the better thing they're doing?
No, that's an excellent question, Alexandre, and I agree with you. I mean, sometimes we have some prejudice about the government. We always, at least in Brazil, Josh, I don't know if in the US, but we have this impression that the government is not always, they don't do their job, they do like the wrong things, you know. And actually,
we only always love our governments. So they're perfect.
You have all reasons for that. But it's here we have this prejudice. But my experience goes like I have the same impression that you have, Alexandre. They're doing just they're maybe a little bit better than the private sector sometimes. Yeah, and they are more, or maybe because once again it's a huge problem for them, and they are just asking for help, so they are more open, and companies are more or less, efficient, we can say. And so the litigation, they have litigation problems, of course. If you talk about like labor litigation in Brazil, it's a huge issue. Tax litigation also. We have two branches. You know that something is wrong when you have to create a branch of the whole legal system to deal with one kind of contract, like labor law, for example. Or you have like a branch of the legal system, like with courts all over the country, just to deal with one person, that is the government. So we have like the federal justice that deals with the federal government. And so, of course, we have problems in the private sector too. And but they face them. The way that they react is more or less the same. But maybe the public policies that are linked to the government are more. They're more eager. They're working more hard. They are harder workers in this issues. And also, I think we see well the challenges. Of course, the public policy problems are bigger and are much more complex. And I think the main problem that we face when we deal with empirical legal studies with the government is to create a political environment that you have like all the people that you need ready to work. I mean, sometimes, for example, if you think about the court here in São Paulo, the state court in São Paulo, we have like what, 400 desembargadores here, state judges. It's a huge structure, and then when you have to persuade and to convince all of them, or even the órgão especial, you know, there is like a group of 25 that are the oldest. It's difficult, and of course, and in the courts in Brazil, you have like the elders. They are in charge of the decisions, and then you have a gap between like technology and people that are not really familiarized with this kind of solution. If you go to the private sector, it's the opposite. You have like younger people, so they know what you're talking about, and so, but the fact is that they don't have the budget also, and the problems are not so big, and they have like a mindset problem, like to change the mindset of the company, and you convince them to invest, like to put good money in something that they really don't know how to work, you know, how the outcome would be, and so it's difficult. But I couldn't say like if you said like if you have to choose who to work for, of course I would go to the government, because I think like solving big problems is more fun, you know. But I wouldn't say that it's easier or not. I don't know. I think it's there.
But they have the same challenges, and they are at the same point.
Different aspects of the same problem, I would say.
So, Ana, do you have a question for Joshua?
Oh, can I, before
Yes.
we go on to Anna's question, and thank you so much. We met some of your colleagues who spoke very, very well of you at the last event we were at, so thanks for having us today. In the U.S., we had judges that loved our project and that backed it. We had to actually litigate to get access to data originally. We had other judges that tried to kill us, metaphorically, that did not want the data out there for various reasons. And we had to fight these battles. And the other battle that we had to fight, so again, not the case, I don't sense anything like that in Brazil, and maybe I'm just a naive foreigner, but I think you have a little bit better situation. The other thing we had to show, and you had to prove it, is one of the faculty member that really raised our funding for this academic project, he was considered at one end of the political spectrum. And I had to train judges across the political spectrum. They used the same tool that the litigators and general counsels did. And we had to prove that the data were just the data, that we didn't have a religious belief about what the policy should be. Our goal was to be the most unbiased, most empirical data, which means the humblest. Like, here's the data, tell us what's wrong, let everyone have access to it, and really all the academics as well as the press, and to cross the burden of proof. I think in Brazil, it's again, there's a window of opportunity, certainly in the judiciary, to do something, and I would take advantage of it. Sorry, Anna, please. Yeah.
Thank you very much for all the explanations. Very, very interesting to hear you talking about AI. And for me, that I don't study very much, very deep this matter. And for our public, I have some questions. Very maybe we have to take some steps back to understand. And I was reading the second part of the book that you were talking about the functions of the artificial intelligence. And I wanted to hear from you, Joshua and Marcelo and Alexandre. What is really the function of artificial intelligence for us in law? What are the advantages and what are the risks of not developing this the artificial intelligence for our system? If you can, please.
That's great. Thank you, obrigado. And I think that my colleagues would definitely have great thoughts on that. I think in terms of functions, I mean, how should we use it as attorneys? There's a few different functions, and so I'll give you just some historical examples. But as the law firm, they would use it in the first instance. So you get an RFP, a request for a proposal, to take on a new case, and you would have to pitch it, and you have to create a budget. And the lawyers would use it essentially as a sales tool. They'd say, here's the case, here's the judge, here's how we might handle it, and they can see that. Traditionally, you would have to hire local counsel to understand what a judge is doing and what maybe think about the landscape. With the empirical data, we could say, I had one client that said, I got the case because of you, because of this platform, not knowing anything about this judge in Atlanta, Georgia, and he was from Palo Alto, California. I knew nothing about this judge, and because I used the platform, he got the case. It wasn't just because of us. He was a great lawyer, but he got the case, and he knew more than a lot of local people about exactly what happened. So it's a democratizing tool that we can use to plan and pitch, and it's a sales tool for lawyers. For the judges, I think it's case management, to understand what's happening and to understand what are the issues. So if they have a very complex procedure, what do other judges do? How do they handle it? They don't have to reinvent the wheel every time they have a case of a certain type. They're not bound by what other judges doing outside of precedent, but they can see, this is how my colleagues handle it. I'll handle it a little bit differently, but they can learn. The learning is collective as opposed to isolated in silos or in our own literary, function. The policymakers can see what's going wrong and what's going right. And that's really exciting. What we haven't shown yet is, what do citizens make of it? How do regular people, they could be business owners or they could just be citizens, how can they see what's going on? And that's something we haven't talked about yet. That's the communication function of this. Once you have the data, how do you explain it to everybody? And in one case, we had a legislative aide, he was the chief of staff for a very powerful member of Congress. And he used a typewriter, right? It was 2008, 2009, and he wanted to understand some very complex technology-related litigation. So we made an almanac, and like farmers used to use back in the day. We said, here's where the activity's happening, here's what's changed over time. And so once you start doing things that help your expert users and the legislators use things, all of a sudden, regular people can start to see law and legal activity for the first time. And they can start to make judgments about, gosh, I know the labor laws are supposed to help us, but maybe that money should go to healthcare instead, or maybe we could tweak things in a certain way. You can have debates about real things. So I think lawyers use it to sell, to create strategy, and to optimize, to save time. The other thing that happens, if you have lawsuits where nobody knows what happens and nobody knows what the results are, the likelihood of settlement is very, very low. Because we're all very zealous. We all think we're going to get the best result for our clients. But if you actually see that, out of 200 cases, only one person has won this type of claim, or the opposite, right, you can start to get to a resolution faster and better. and hopefully draft contracts better sooner and faster. Did I answer your question at all? It's a big question.
Yeah, and for me, just before Marcelo, is just like, you know, we are doctors, and when you go to a doctor, what the doctor say to us? Go to do all those exams, and then come back, and I can, with this information, have a better information to do the treatment, to choose the better treatment, you know. But we as a lawyers, we didn't have this kind of X-ray until now, you know. So we are doctors without knowing nothing, just our intuition. Yes, yes, alchemist. So now I think the first thing is we have the opportunity to have our X-ray, you know, to make better decisions. So we are talking about a state court, labor state court, and the judge came to us and say, "Oh, I want artificial intelligence, and I want to know how's the percentage of agreements." And we were telling them, "Oh, what's the difference if I said to you is 61% or 67%? Nothing. You don't need that. What do you need? A dashboard with how many cases this company have in this court? How's the range of agreement? How many cases do we have about this issue?" So what we need is an X-ray. What we need is better information to have better decisions. That's it. So for me, the first thing here, just before artificial intelligence are really doing something for us, is to organize the data. So that's what's going on here. And Marcelo and Joshua, one of the most important persons in the whole world doing this, because Brazil, of course, is one of the major cases of digital justice in the whole world for looking for legal service. And in the other hand, for the other sectors, artificial intelligence, it's not really intelligent. It's just mathematics and statistics. So if you have a data, and then you have men's with 70% of the biggest salaries, and you don't look at it, and you just use this data, and you build your model, and then, who I'm gonna hire for this big salary? A man. Because artificial intelligence don't have bias. The bias is on the data set, you know. So if we are building some models using artificial intelligence, now we understand that we have to look very carefully about this data, you know. So this is the big challenge, because there's a very dangerous thing that we can do if we're not able to understand how it's work, and how we have to deal with these things when we are working together with the tech guys, because now we are at the moment, and we already understand that, and we have to have an environment to work the tech guys with the human and social guys, you know, because now we have all these challenges really happening, and this is the most important thing to see.
Yeah, I think you both of you said like everything is just. I just would like to add like two things. One is that, of course, AI is related, and technology is related to like making better decisions. And so, I mean, depending on who you are and what you're doing, so it has like a different impact, for lawmakers and for lawyers, as Joshua was explaining, or for courts. I mean, so you have like a different, like a decision architecture. So AI can help you can make this small decisions in your place, so you save time to think about like complex decisions by yourself using tools that is going to help you. And that's it, I think. So if you're a lawyer, you need a better strategy, or you need a better legal fees proposal, as Joshua said. It's really important. And of course, if you know that you have like great chances of winning a case. You can bet on a success fee, and if you don't, it's just like maybe I'll ask for money in advance because the outcome is not. And of course, you have to tell your client that. And if you're a lawmaker, you can assess the impact. You can evaluate the impact of the law that you're willing to do. And I was part of a group that it was like a fast-growing economies. It was not the largest economies, but the fast-growing. It's an interesting point of view, and they something that they had in common. It was that they were all based in experiments. So they were. It's not you grow fast, not because you have the right ideology, or because you found out like a textbook that you can just follow these rules and then you're going to be rich or your country is going to grow. No, we face different situations. What you have to do is you have to try different solutions, see what works, and change and be fast. In adaptation, you have to adapt fast, and this is more important than choosing being left-winged or right-winged or the libertarian or the communist or whatever. I mean, just each problem, you have to think each problem by its own, facing its own characteristics. So, and technology helps you, gives you power to have more time and more tools to think each problem as a single problem that has its own solution. And also, just one last thing that I would like to add is that when you look for the largest companies in the world, like 50 years ago, they would be like engineering, oil companies, and like traditional related to physics and to what we call like hard science in the past. And nowadays they are all sociological companies, which is like Alphabet or Amazon and I mean all those Facebook. And they are huge because they are building value because they are using technology to understand human behavior. And this is completely new. This is something that wouldn't work like 30 years ago, and now it's working nowadays. And it's in my opinion is the evidence, the most important evidence that this kind of approach really works because you're building value. And this is it's not academic. It's not an idea. It's not philosophical. It's building value. Just look at the stock market, and you're going to reach this conclusion. Let's hope to have like sometimes in the future a legal AI company that could be like as big as Alphabet or Facebook.
Thank you so much for answering the questions. It was okay, very nice. Thank you. And I was listening to you and thinking about something else here. Let's suppose like I'm a lawyer and I want to understand how a specific judges a matter, a problem. I don't know if it happens in America, but in Brazil, is it ordinary to see the same judges judging from different perspectives and different judgments over the same questions? So it's kind of it's difficult to it's almost unpredictable how this question, like your case, is going to be judged. I don't know. Of course, artificial intelligence can help us, of course, but and I see that sometimes the judges can be like surprised to see the range of the possibilities, like public.
I think that's really important. By the way, great point about bias to action. That's the most important part of the Amazons of the world, but also of Silicon Valley. Is you try something and that failure is actually really valuable and it teaches you a lot. I think the judges, we can use it to see the judges, and the judges can use it to see themselves. And our hypothesis is, so when we first released data about two giant companies like Alphabet and Samsung, and what were their patterns of settlement in these certain types of cases, it changed their behavior. So people that were at the far end of the spectrum in terms of settling too quickly or too late, they changed. So it is possible that if you add light to what judges are doing, it will probably influence their behavior. Think of like in physics, right? When you turn the light on or take a measurement, all of a sudden people are aware of this and they may change. Now, hopefully that's usually for the better, but I think it's important to understand that not only will the judges change, but the lawyers will as well. Judges can see, hey, if this lawyer is doing silly motions all the time, and he or she has lost the last 200 motions of this type, doesn't look legitimate, and then all of a sudden, they may be in the light. They say that sunlight is the best of disinfectants, right, is one of our judicial mottos in the U.S. Yeah, there you go. And so that sunlight can improve like the range of activity and the range of behavior, but it can also make the entire system a little more efficient potentially. So no one knows what will happen, but there certainly is a potential for craziness to be reduced.
Yeah, this asymmetry of information. Yeah. So, Joshua, we are talking about this X-ray, and if you have all this data and understand the problems, we can go through prevention, just like medicine, as we talk. So, because we are talking a lot about litigation, but how can the legal service, advisory service, and strategic service can use this data? So, for example, you're a big company in all of Brazilian states, and now you can see, we have consumers claim about this issue in São Paulo, another issue in Rio. So this is a problem of internal procedures. There's a problem into the company. So we have to fix that and stop the new claims, So how do you think we can go through prevention and also help those advisory and strategic lawyers?
Great. And Marcelo, do you want to take that one too, or I can start and then you can... So, I had one experience where I had a client of mine that was using this litigation tool a lot, like more than any other law firm, or one of the top. And I was like, why are they, and they were an M&A firm. They were doing mergers and acquisitions. I was like, why are you guys using this data? And it turns out they were using it for due diligence. So every mergers and acquisition deal they did, they looked at the litigation field. And the reason you would do that is because if you're buying a company, say a unit of a big company, Monsanto, or you're buying a piece of a Unilever or whatever it is, they may not have lawsuits in a certain area because of political reasons, or they have agreements with people. But as soon as you buy it, say you're a private equity firm, the litigation may spike. So you need to understand the field risk of that. Or you may not have litigation in a certain field because the company's too small. It's just not big enough to attract attention from plaintiffs' lawyers yet. And as soon as an investment happens, there'll be a spike. So knowing the litigation field risk, knowing when the other thing we see happening is before people do a big transaction, they see, hey, is this counterparty, do they sue a lot of people? Do they have a lot of angry former counterparties? You can see their behavior, and you think of Uber and the riders, right, or 99 and the riders. You can see the driver's history, but also if it's a difficult rider, your points get lower. So I think it's a two-way lens, and you can see people on both sides of the issue. The best to me is where you see a big problem in the policy. Not only can you change your contracts, but you can also change the law, and you can say, we have a big problem in this one area. It's not efficient for anybody, and eventually you build up enough support by the empirical data that you can improve.
Marcelo has a very nice case for adoption here in Brazil. He studied all the legal claims about that, and it helps to change our law and the administrative procedures to do that. So, Marcelo, tell us how can we use that to change the law and to advisory and strategic jobs.
It's just one point that Ana was saying is what we call volatility of decisions, court decisions, that one judge takes two cases that are similar and then makes two different decisions, but the cases are really similar. And this is interesting because sometimes it's similar to you, but not for the judge, and the judge is reacting to variables that are not explained. So your model of explaining the decisions are not accurate enough. So this is our point of view. Sometimes because we think as lawyers that only legal variables explain legal decisions, but that's not necessarily true. Maybe sometimes because the plaintiff is poor, it brings a different decision. So volatility is a really interesting. We call it volatility. I don't know. It's just when you have like different. You have a high probability of a judge deciding similar cases in different ways. But what we call similar, maybe not. Maybe it's not enough to explain. And then data can help you in doing that. And of course, you can use it in all kinds of way. You have like settlement strategies, you have litigation strategy, you have like a better assessment of a new regulation. So, and as for example, this is the example that Alexandre was telling, was the adoption example that we have. We had the opportunity to study with CNJ the adoption system, and then we realized that there was like a huge line of people wanting to adopt kids, and there was like a line of kids on the other side. And we said we shouldn't have like two lines. One line should end, and then of course we have people waiting for new kids, or we have kids waiting for new parents. But it doesn't make sense to have both at the same time. It's a matching problem. So what's going on? And then, of course, we had like a lot of a whole bunch of hypotheses of what was going on at that time. So it's just like different preferences for, but we tested all those hypotheses, and then we reached the conclusion that the problem was age. So when you had like kids that were 4 to 5 years or more, people, the potential parents, they had the opinion. I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know if it's true, but that's the fact that we were facing. Agree or not, is that if you adopt a kid older than 5 years old, you don't have like a full education experience. You cannot. It's more or less part of the kid is just done, and then you cannot like fully educate as you would if you had the opportunity to have like a younger kid. And of course, and this is one thing that we found out that of course you can start like public campaigns or advertisements saying no you can't do it, this is not true and so on. But what we realized was that we had like one thing in the whole proceeding that was like trying to summon the biological parents that like took more than a year on average. So it was 1.5 years. So as the kids, they arrived in the system around 3 years old, and 1.5 year put the kids really close to what we call like a non-adoption zone, to use a really ugly name for something that is. And then we said we have to be faster on summoning parents. We have to. If we don't find them, you have to make a decision. And of course, there are always difficult decisions to make, but like how do we improve the speed of summoning the biological parents? And there was a huge discussion, a political discussion. We said if it was wrong or not to do that. What we said, we just simple calculation. We estimated the number of kids that would be adopted. It's around like 800 a year more if we could like reduce in 10 months the average of the time that we spent trying to summon the biological parents. And then we did that. So because this is really interesting when we have data and when you don't have data. When you don't have data, you have like an ideological discussion, argument, and then which is impossible to solve. So what do you want? You want a lawsuit that is faster, or you want a lawsuit that is more accurate? I don't know. It's impossible. When you have like two values or two legal principles colliding, you can't make a decision. Now, what we can try to do is just like to assess, to evaluate the results and say, if you do this, we have like 800 kids more every year being adopted, and this is the kind of approach that sometimes change the whole thing. That's what really makes a huge difference. So if you start to say, let's not talk about principles or about what our abstract opinion or whatever, but let's try to assess, to evaluate the consequences of each decision. And then, of course, you cannot solve all the problems doing that, but it's easier to reach into a common conclusion when you have data on the table. And that's
You want to comment that? Then we go to the last question.
Absolutely, and we could talk about this for days. So that's thrilling, by the way. That's a great story, and it's when you can repeat in social contexts, in securities litigation. I mean, there's all kinds of places where we can do that. But like, let's help kids. Like, that's a very simple thing. It's very hard to attack that goal. And if you can show it, you can prove it. I found exactly the same thing in the U.S., that people are very ideological about all kinds of policies, but empiricism is an antidote to factionalism. Empiricism is an antidote to factionalism, and it's the curse of all democracies that we have this. We're one step away from dictatorship, all of us, right? And the thing that cures us, that prevents that evil, is empirical data. Here are the facts, here's what's really happening. It's the opposite of what's happening in Russia right now. Like, this is the reality, let's help kids. I think there's a lot of also resistance to quantification of legal process. Oh, we don't want to do this, it's abstract, it's a big deal. And that's important, and something, the quality of the matters does matter a lot. But if we don't quantify at all, if we avoid empirical data, kids get lost in the system. And the intent of these systems fails every single time. So if you avoid mathematics, you essentially become a slave to it because you can't cope with these issues. So anyway,
Very
how do you
nice.
say congratulations in Portuguese?
Parabéns.
Parabéns on your success.
No,
It's
it's a-
just one
Yes, of course.
one little thing that I would like to add is that sometimes people, they say to me, no, you're going to bring math to law. And math, it's against humanity, something that it's cold. And it's the opposite. It's the way we look to people through mathematics and through and using statistical tools brings you closer to people. That's something that it's really important for people to understand. It's numbers. It's really boring sometimes to deal with, but it's much more humane. When you do that, it's better than like spending your time inside a library or whatever.
It's an amazing. We have a lot of questions, and we can keep talking here for a lot of hours. So I just want to thank you, José Magalhães Teixeira, who's here with us, for your support, and Ana for make it happen. And I have the last question for you three, also to Ana, who is our cultural director. So, what's the new skills for lawyers? How can we train the legal professional, judges, lawyers, prosecutors, to use those kind of technologies, to have this this analytical way to think, to use empirical data? So what's the challenge to train those professionals? First, you and your last impressions for your trip in Brazil, because this is the last event for 10 days, Tammy.
Until the next trip, hopefully. Anna, do you want to start us off?
Yes.
I was thinking about here what to say. I guess this is a new kind of thinking for all of us, and we have a lot of tools in our hands. A challenge I can see is learning how to use it for the benefits of every player in our system, in our law system. I guess this is quite a huge challenge already, because not everybody is familiarized with the technology. So it's like we are kind of resistant to break these walls. So I guess we have to feel like invited to face this new kind of this new form of communication and these new tools of improving our decisions. I guess it's a process. I guess it's not going to happen like tomorrow. And the first step I can see is for people to become interested in the matter and to dedicate more time to understand how it works and to try to learn it.
Very nice. And
Yeah.
the good news is there's a place for every profile because we have those kind of lawyers who doesn't want to deal with the technology, but they know what they need. They know how to do it with that. You know, you have the other one, such as ours, who are the translators between both worlds, the tech guys and the lawyers. And there's a new one who really likes to code, a lawyer who wants to be with the tech guy. So we have all these profiles, and all of them are important in this table. So, Marcelo.
Yes, I think. Anna. Yes, I mean, just excellent contribution.
And how to train so to work with a multidisciplinary team, because
Yes.
you're the guy who work with engineer guys, designers, and statistics guys.
It's one important question is if you don't have to be a researcher. You just have to understand research and like to consume data. So it's important when I talk to my students, I say, "Man, you don't necessarily have to know how to do this kind of work because it's complex, it's multidisciplinary. So you need like statisticians, you need data scientists, mathematicians, and all kinds of, and sometimes econometricians also. And so we bring, like, when we do a big research, we have like a team that is even engineering in the beginning, because they are really good in calculation. We need them sometimes. And so it's a difficult task. So, and you won't be able to do it by your own. You know, it's a teamwork. But when we discuss education and how to teach, I think they should be like good consumers. You have to more or less understand the language. You know, like how to read a table, or how a sample could affect the result, or what is a standard deviation, or what is an average and a median, and so how to just to consume data and consume results is important, and this is something that all law, everybody that is studying law now should be educated, should be trained to, not to once more, not to produce or to do research, but at least to consume research, to understand the value like of data that we have to and then to make better decisions. But that's
Very nice. So, Joshua, how to train the people and your last impressions about this trip, and we hope you come back very soon.
Yeah, you gotta put me to work. I'm a chattering tourist, and we have work to do. And I think, again, Brazil can lead. It is leading, and we want to accelerate that with real projects. And the perfect can be the enemy of the good. So starting on specific things that are useful to people. I'm a humanities guy, and I learned math, really interesting mathematics, in law school. So to me, it was a benefit. But I still found running a legal AI company, the hardest thing I could do was to find people that could read and write well. It was very difficult. So those core skills will always be useful. I think what's different now is that, the point about multidisciplinary teams is very important. Even in law firms now, you want multidisciplinary teams. Diversity. And you can imagine a hospital that's run only by surgeons. No one would want to go there, right? Surgeons doing billing and administration would be a disaster, right? So you want a diverse group of people in any functional organization. What I really think is that there is a yin and yang between qualitative and quantitative data. The qualitative stuff, we have statistics. Here's all the numbers on these cases, but I can zoom in and look at the opinion and see what the judge wrote, what she was thinking, her justification. So there's an infinite faceting you can do on the qualitative level, but we're still collecting all the quantitative stuff. My impression is that we need to get to work, and that avoids all philosophical issues, right? Making progress and doing what you did, again, parabens. Let's help kids. Let's help companies. Let's help citizens. Let's help judges. Let's get to work. And it's not philosophical. It's very practical.
Thank you again. Thank you, our audience and Yaspi. And please, Ana.
Parabéns a vocês pela organização.
A gente acabou, né? So I'd like to, bom, terminando em português, né, queria agradecer muito a presença de todos que nos honram aqui com a sua presença e aos nossos queridos Marcelo, Alexandre e Joshua. Thank you so much for your presence here with us. Obrigada a todos que nos assistem pelo YouTube e até a próxima.